Hello, everybody. Welcome to ICC's Game of the Week with your host, as always, Joel Benjamin. The Barcelona GM International produced one of the smallest spreads of any cross table I've ever seen. Only 1 point separated the tournament winners from the tailenders in the six-player field. Alexander Morozevich was awarded first on tiebreaks, but the finish probably left a sour taste in his mouth. 26-year-old Paraguayan Axel Bachmann handed him a last-round defeat and caught him up at 3 out of 5. Morozevich is a brilliant but unconventional player. In a situation where a draw would clinch first place, his overly quirky opening play landed him in trouble. All right, let's get to it. Bachmann, who has studied in the United States, I'm not sure if he's still living here or not, but he has played many times in American tournaments, so he might be personally familiar to some of our listeners. And anyway, he plays knight f3, goes for flank opening. And now, interesting move, c6. Usually black castles first, and then after c4, he can defend the center with c6, or he can take on c4, depending on what type of Grunfeld mode he wants to be in. But here, the idea of playing c6 first is to answer c4 by capturing this pawn. And of course, with the pawn on c6, that makes makes white work a little harder to get the pawn back. And as a general rule of thumb, whenever you have a queen's gambit situation where you play c4, when black plays c6, as in the Slav, be aware that that pawn on c4 might be for the taking, that if you leave it undefended, you might end up playing a gambit. In this case, white is able to get the pawn back. He plays a4 to inhibit b5. So black is able to make white basically play this extra move to take the pawn back. But on the other hand, when he takes on c4, he usually wants to follow up with c5. So it's not that the c6 is necessarily such a useful extra move. Now, continuing from here, there's a lot of games where black castles. And this is one interesting line. Black trying to hold on to the pawn for a bit with bishop e6. And you see this type of transaction, which this type of thing happens in a lot of different openings. e4, then black counterattacks the knight, and there have been several games like this. Knight takes c6, and here you have various pawns hanging all over the place. It's kind of a sharp position, but probably roughly about equal, and as results have indicated. But Morozevich goes in a different direction. Knight e4. And this move has been played. Black is simply trying to defend that pawn with the knight, not necessarily to hold on to it in the long run, but just to make white work harder to get it. Queen c2, knight d6. And then not only defends the pawn, but sets up this idea of playing bishop f5 to pick up a tempo on the queen. So consequently, white has usually played e4 in this position, which stops bishop f5, and then goes about to take the pawn. And the nicest move for black then seems to be knight a6. And looking over the results, it seems that black does pretty okay from here. So probably Morozevich was looking into those games and was happy to repeat this pattern. But Bachmann actually goes in a different direction. Perhaps he wanted to be a little more conservative with the pawns, not committing them so much early. And he plays simply knight a3, looking to take back the pawn. And this actually turns out to be a novelty, interestingly enough. I think that some people have played knight d2, which at least would discourage bishop f5. But here Bachmann is not actually too concerned about that move. He just goes and moves the queen.